Masechet Baba Kama Daf Samech He. Gufa, we're going to return to a statement that we saw earlier. Amar Rav, Keren Ka'en Sheganav. Tashlome Kefil v'tashlome arba v'chamisha kishat hamada badin. When a thief pays back the principal, it's assessed of the value at the time of it, that it was stolen. Whereas when the thief pays back, if he needs to pay back double or 4 and 5 times for an ox or a sheep, then it's assessed according to the value at the time of the trial. Why would that be? Well, it makes sense. He, from the moment that he steals it, he has to give back the item. If the item doesn't exist, he has to pay for the value of the item. But that liability is incurred at the very second that he steals it. And therefore, we set that price in. It was $100 at that time. You have to pay $100 no matter what, whether the price afterwards goes up or down. However, the liability to pay back double or 4 and 5 only kicks in when witnesses come, the judges decide that you have to pay that amount. In fact, he may not have to pay kefil if he would admit to it, or witnesses don't come, then he would not pay at all. He would not pay the kefil. So that amount is all he becomes liable to it only at the time of the trial, and therefore we're going to assess it at the time of the trial. If it was worth $100 before at the time of the judgment, and then it goes up to 200 or go down to 50 or whatever, so then he'll have to pay double of the new price later on. Good. My Tamad Rav. What's Rav's source? Amar kera geneva v'chayim. Amai kama rachamana chayim b'geneva achyah lekeren ka'en sheganab. This is the pasuk that we already saw yesterday. Im himaseh timaseh biyado hageneva mishor ad chamor atze chayim shenaim yeshalem. It says the word chayim regarding a geneva. So what does that mean? That if it's alive, this is to teach us that we have to bring it to life, meaning bring it life, bring it up to the same value that it was. Not that it's dead, but rather it was very healthy and now it's less healthy. So when you're assessing the principal, you definitely bring it up to the value of the time of the theft. Even if the value went down afterwards. That is Rav's statement, and that's his source. Next, we're going to have 3 challenges to Rav, and then 1 attempted proof. So, challenge number 1. Amar Rav Sheshat. Amina ki nayim v'shachib Rab amar laha shema'ata. This is a serious challenge. Rav Sheshat says Rav must have been sleeping when he said this. Okay, it's not a very respectful way of speaking about his teacher. On the other end, he's saying, well, Rav in his right mind wouldn't have said it, so the only explanation is that he was sleeping. Anyway, a rhetorical way to say, I have a really serious question, because, look, it goes against the Baraita. Detanya, kehusha vishmina, mishalim tashome kefil v'tashmar b'chamisha ke'en sheganav. Let's say a thief stole a scrawny animal, was worth only 50, and then he fanned it up, and now it's worth 100. Then witnesses come. He's found out. He has to pay double, or if he slaughters and sells it, he has to pay 4 and 5 from the moment, according to the moment when he stole it. Even though we're talking about the fines here, and the Rav said that the fines should go at the time of the trial, when it was nice and fattened up. But this Baraita says, no, you go with the original amount, the 50, which is much less. So you see, this directly contradicts Rav. So he must have been sleeping. But we have an answer. Amreh, mishum de'amar le ana patimna ve'at shakalt. No, in this case is different. Because the thief is the one that made it fat, he fed it a lot, so then the thief has a claim. He says, I fanned up the animal, and you're going to take the money, right? I fanned it up, I fed it a lot, I spent money on it, and now I'm going to have to pay a double or 4 and 5 times the amount that I put into it. Now, why are we being nice to a thief? Why don't we just throw the book at him? Well, we do want to penalize a thief and not encourage theft. On the other hand, the rabbis also want to encourage a thief to make teshuvah. And so if he's going to have to pay too much, then he may not. So we want to make sure that the fine is just right. And here the thief has a valid claim. That's not the same as Rav's case. Rav was talking about a case where the market value goes up or down. That's different. So if the thief put money into it, then you say, listen, what you put into it, you don't have to pay. So you could pay the original amount at the time of the fine. But if it's just that the market price went from 50 at the time of the theft to 100 at the time of the trial, in that case, there's no claim. The thief can't say, I made it fat. It was just the market price, and then he would have to pay the price at the time of the trial. Good. So we reconciled. That's question number 1. Question number 2, Tashema. Shemena v'hichisha. Mishlam tashem mekefet v'tashmei arba'a v'chamisha ka'ayin sheganav. This is an opposite case of the Braita. If, when he stole it, it was nice and fat, and then the thief didn't take care of it, didn't feed it a lot, and it got thinner. So the thief thief is caught. He has to pay double, or 4 and 5, according to the time of the theft. And this also is against Rav, because he says that you always pay the fines by the time of the trial. So, challenge number 2. And the answer to that is, Hatam nameh mishum damrinan le, ma li katla kula, ma li katla palga, ki kamara beyukra vezula hu deka amar. In this case, where the thief actively made it lean, he withheld food from it, and so in that case we can make the following claim about the thief, against the interest of the thief. We could say, what's the difference if the thief killed it totally or killed it partially? If he killed it totally, right, then he still has to pay 4 or 5 times, even though now it's obviously worth a lot less when it's dead. Well, if he withholds food from it, that's like a partial killing. He's basically killing it slowly. So that's all part of his act. So of course he has the ability to kill it or make it weak or make it worth less. That doesn't count in changing the value that he has to pay. And so when he made it purposely or directly, he made it go from a higher value to a lower value, then he still has to pay the original amount, and that's what this Baraita was saying at the time of Ganav. When Rav said his law that when you count fines, it's at the time of the court case, that wasn't talking about a case where the thief actively did something, but rather when the marketplace changed, the market changed, it went up, the market went down. So if in this parallel to this Braita, the thief didn't do anything. He kept feeding it, stayed exactly the same weight, but the market value went down. So then, since that liability kicks in at the time of the trial, he only has to pay the amount at the time of the trial. Okay, good. So that solves those 2 questions, and so both of them really have basically the same answer. If the thief makes it fatter or leaner, then we don't count what the thief does. But if the market changes, that's what I was talking about, and everybody would agree that it goes up and down according to the market value at the time of the trial for the fines. Now, hechidame. What kind of case was Rav talking about? Was setting up a question from based on comparison to Rabbah. Let's say, is Rav talking about a case where originally when he stole it, it was worth 1 zuz, and then the price went up and now it's worth 4 zuz. So in that case, keren ka'ayin sheganav, and according to Rav, the principal amount would be 1 zuz, which was the amount at the time that it was stolen. So let's assume that's the case that Rav is teaching us about. Lema peliga derav ad Rabbah, dama Rabbah. Then it would seem that Rav is arguing on Rabbah. Now this is not as strong a challenge as the 2 before, because those were from Baraitot. Now, although sometimes we say Rav Tanahu Palig, Rav could argue on a Tana, but we don't usually like to say that if we can reconcile it. So over there, those were stronger questions. Here, Rabbah is actually a student of Rav. So Rav doesn't have to agree with Rabbah at all. In fact, it's more of a problem for Rabbah than it is for Rav. Nevertheless, we want to see, really, would Rav disagree with this case? Because the following case seems to make sense. Someone stole a barrel of wine from his friend. This wine, when he stole it, was worth only 1 zuz. But then the price of wine went up, and then later on it was worth 4 zuz. So this is parallel to the case that we assume that Rav is talking about. Now here's the chidush of Rabbah. Tabra o shatya mishalem arba. Itbar mimela mishalem zuza. If the thief purposely breaks it, the barrel, or drinks up all the wine, he has to pay 4 times, he has to pay 4 zuz for the keren, just for the principal. Why is that? Well, here's the reason. When the thief has the barrel of wine intact, he has to return the barrel of wine itself, right? You can't just pay for it. If it's there, you have to return the actual item. So let's say when the time he stole it, it was worth 1 zuz. After a few days, the price went up to 4 zuz, but he still has it. After that day, he drinks the whole thing. By drinking the whole thing, he's actually stealing it a second time, because he wasn't allowed to just take it for himself. He was supposed to return it. And therefore, that's a second act of stealing. So now the price is according to the time of the drinking. He doesn't have to pay for the original stealing anymore. Now he has to pay for the time that he drank it, and this is at the higher price, which is 4 zuz. However, if it broke by itself, it's not his fault that he didn't break it on purpose. Well, then it's not a new act of theft. Instead, we go to the original price. When he actually stole it, it was worth 1 zuz, and he only has to pay 1 zuz. That's Rabbah's chidush. Now, the challenge is from the case when it went up, it seems according to Rav, when it was 1 and then it ended up being 4, the principal is going to be 1 zuz. But here, according to Rabbah, if it was 1 zuz and it went up to 4, and then he drank it and he drank it after that, then you have to pay 4 for the principal, not 1 from the time of the original theft. So, would they disagree with each other? Because even Rabbah kind of makes sense. He has a good logic to him. And we answer, Amre, ki kama Rav, kegon demikara shavya arba, ulbasof shavya zuza. Keren, ke'ayin sheganav, tashlume kefav, tashlume arba v'chamisha, kishat hamada bedin. And we answer, in fact, Rav would agree with what Rabbah said. And if that was the case, and the price went up and he drank it after, yeah, that's like a new theft. So that is, in fact, consistent with what Rav said. But when Rav was saying his chidush, he was talking about a case of the opposite. Because that case was something that everybody would agree with. He was talking about a case where it was 4 at the time of theft, and then it went down to 1. So the principal, he has to pay 4, like the time of the theft, but when we calculate the double, or 4 and 5, it will be at the time of standing trial, which would be double, or 4 or 5 times the 1 zuz. Good. So that's the answer to that. So that was 3 questions and 3 answers. And now we're going to have a potential proof from a long baraita. Taneh Rabbi Hanina l'Sayo'eh l'Rav. Baal habayit shetan ta'anat ganab bapikadon. V'nishba v'hoda u'ba'u edim. Im ad shelo ba'u edim hoda meshalem keren v'chomesh v'asham. Im misheba'u edim v'hoda meshalem tashlumei kefel v'asham v'chumsho ole lo bichvelo divrei Rabbi Yaakov. Okay, so this baraita may support Rav. We're going to see 3 different opinions in the baraita. So far, this is all one opinion, and the proof is going to be from this one opinion. We're talking about Baal habayit means a shomer, that someone gave him a deposit to watch, shomer chinam, and he says, he claims that it was stolen, and he even swore that to that effect. But then he admitted that he swore falsely. In fact, it wasn't stolen; he was keeping it for himself. And afterwards, Edim came and said that he kept it for himself and it was not stolen. Now, we look at the order. If he admitted before the witnesses came, well, then that's good, because then he doesn't have to pay the fines. But he still has to pay the principal plus a 5th, plus an asham offering, which is asham gizelot. Anytime someone swears falsely regarding something that he stole, and then he admits it, so he has to, or witnesses come, no matter what, he has to add a 5th, and he has to pay an asham. However, if the witnesses came first, and then after the witnesses came, he also admitted it, So then he has two penalties. He has to pay double because the witnesses came first, so he has to pay double, and that goes to the person he stole it from, and he has to pay, and he has to bring an asham offering as well. That goes to the Bet HaMikdash, and he has to also pay a fifth. But here's the thing: the fifth he doesn't have to pay separately from the kefel. The fifth can be combined with the kefel because the extra fifth also goes to the person that he stole from. But as we're going to see, what this means, chumsho ole lo bichvelo, is only if the fifth and the double are exactly the same amount. Now you're asking, how could a fifth and double be exactly the same amount? Oh, that's going to be the proof for Rav. We're going to see in a case where it was 4 and then goes down to 1. In that case, the payment of the fifth for lying goes by the keren, by the original amount at the time of the theft, and that was 4, so a fifth of 4 is 1. I know what you're thinking. It's not, but when we count in the Gemara, we count according to the outside. In other words, it's going to be a fifth of the total at the end, because you're going to have to pay 4 plus 1 is 5 at the end, so a fifth of 5 is 1. So when the Gemara says a fifth, it actually means a quarter in the way that we usually do math. So that would be 1, and then since it went down to 1 at the time of the trial, so the double is going to be only 1. So since here the fifth is 1 and the kefel is 1, but that only works if you follow Rav's law that the keren is calculated at the time of the theft and kefel is calculated at the time of the trial. Okay, anyway, all that is Rabbi Yaakov's proof, but first we're going to finish the Braita and then bring the proof. Hachamim omrim berosho v'hamishitav mamon hamishtalem berosh mosif homesh mamon she'en mishtalem berosh en mosif homesh. Let's look at the pasuk inside first. We're talking about here that if someone swears falsely regarding something that he stole, or mikol asher shaba alav l'sheker v'shilamoto berosho v'chamishitav Yosef alav l'asher hu lo itenenu beyom ashmato. So he has to pay. Berosho here means the principal, and he has to add a fifth and give it to the victim that he stole from. The next pasuk goes on and says ve'et ashamo yavi l'Adonai. He also has to bring an asham offering. So based on this, Chachamim say berosho, the principal and the fifth, that's to have to be in an equivalent case. So only when you pay only when you're paying the principal only, right? Berosh, and there's no further payment, only the principal, then you have to pay a fifth. But if you're not paying just the principal, because you're paying kefel or 4 and 5, then you do not add a fifth. So according to Chachamim, anytime you're paying a fine, a different fine for 2 or 4 and 5 times, you do not have to pay a fifth at all. Chachamim would still say that you have to bring a korban. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer en chomesh ve'hasham mishtalem b'makom sheyesh kefel. Rashbi agrees regarding the fifth that you don't pay when you're paying double, but he adds to that you don't even have to bring an asham. If you're paying double because you're a thief and you were caught, or a shomer and you lied about it, and you're paying double, then you don't bring a fifth. You have to pay a fifth for swearing falsely, and you also do not have to bring korban for swearing falsely. That's the end of the Braita. Here's the proof on behalf of Rav. Katane mihat chumsho ole lo bichvelo Rabbi Yaakov hechidame idlem demekara shavyar ba ulbasov shavyar ba chumsho ole lo bichvelo. So anyway, Rabbi Yaakov said that you have to pay the fifth, and you can include the fifth together with the kefel if they are the same amount. How could the fifth be the same amount as the kefel? If it was worth 4 and at the time of theft, and it's still worth 4 at the time of trial, well then that's not going to be equal, because then the fifth is going to be 1 zuz, and the double is going to be 4 zuz, and so that wouldn't work. Kefela arba v'chumsha zuzah. The kefel in that case is 4, and the chomesh is only 1, so that's not equal. Ela lav demikara shavya arba'al basof shavya zuza. tichvela zuzah vechumshe zuzah. But it would work in a case where at the time of the theft, the item was worth 4. But then the price went down, and at the time of the trial, it was worth only 1. In that case, the double will be 1 zuz, because that goes by the time of the trial, but the fifth will be a fifth of the original amount at the time of the theft, which was 4, and a chomesh fine of 4 is 1, and there you go, it's exactly the same, and that case can only work if you follow Rav's law. So that's a potential proof for Rav. Alma keren ke'an sheganav tashumeh kevel tashumeh arba v'chamisha kishat hamada bedin, and that's a proof for Rav that when we calculate the principal, we go by the time of the theft. When we calculate double or 4 and 5, then we follow the time of the trial. So is this a good proof? Amar Rava le'olam. Rava says it's not necessarily a proof. I could even say what the original hypothesis was, that it's something that was at the time of theft it was 4, and it remains 4 at the time of trial. 4 and 4. And that which you asked appropriately, because in that case the double would be 4, but the fifth would be only 1, and then those wouldn't be the same, so you couldn't combine them into one payment. We could construct a case like that where it would be equal. For example, if, let's say, he stole and he lied about it, and then he swears 4 times about this. We're talking about a thief, a shomer, who claims it was stolen, but in fact he was lying, and he lies and swears 4 different times. And then after that he admits. So now the double payment would be 4, because that goes by the time of the trial when it was 4. Now the payment, the chamishi tav, is in fact 1, but he swore 4 times, so he has to pay another 1 for all 4 times, which adds up to 4 also. And since it's chamishi tav, it's a plural, so we learn from there that you can pay more than 1/5 penalty if you swear many times, and so that could be the case that the Baraita was talking about, Rabbi Yaakov and the Baraita was talking about, and therefore it's not necessarily a proof for Rav, but it's also not a disproof. All right, now that we mentioned this Baraita, let's analyze the other opinions in it. Amar mor chamim omrim berosho v'chamishi tav. Mamon mishtalem berosh mosif chomesh. Mamon she'en mishtalem berosh en mosif chomesh. Aval hasham maiteh. So according to Chachamim, since it says berosho, meaning the principal, and then it says the fifth, we learn from that if you're paying the principal and the principal only, then you have to add a fifth. But if you're not paying just the principal, because you're also adding paying kefel or something else, then you don't have to pay a fifth. So it's true you don't have to pay the fifth penalty, but you do have to bring in Hasham no matter what. And now we're asking Hachamim, why would you make a distinction between the fifth payment and the Hasham? Regarding the fifth payment, you said, you don't pay it because it says Rosho and Chamishi Tav back to back. And so if you're not paying only the principal, then you also don't pay the fifth. But Hasham is also written, it's in the next pasuk, but it's right after that. You have to bring a korban Hasham. So if they're all consequent upon the one before, then you shouldn't have to bring in Hasham either. A good question. Amri lach Rabbanan et paske kera. So they say no. The word et is divides. See, we look back at the pasuk. It says v'shilam to b'rosho v'chamishi tav. These 2 words are back to back. Therefore, you only pay the chamishit when you're paying the principal amount and no more than that. Fine. But the next one, ve'et ashamo, ve'et, besides being a new pasuk, but is more importantly, because they didn't have nikudot and ta'amim in the Sefer Torah, so more importantly, that the word ve'et is a separating word, that asham you bring all the time, no matter what. Good. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, ve'et arbe kera. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, he says that you don't bring, if you don't pay a fifth, you also don't bring in asham. Why? Because he would say the vav of ve'et is combining, it joins them together. Okay, so that's why they join them together. What does Rabbanan going to do with the vav? Rabbanan amri lach, la lichtov rachamana lo vav velo et. So rabbis say, listen, if the Torah wanted to connect them, then don't put an et to separate them, and then you wouldn't need a vav to connect them either. From the fact that you have an et means the Torah wants to separate them. Don't bring me the vav, that makes no sense. Or it's adding a vav to connect them because the et separated them. No, if the et clearly is there to separate them, otherwise the Torah would not put anything at all. That's a good claim. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai amar lach et la sagad la katab lafsuke ben mamon gavoa lemamon hejot hilkach atavav arbe keram. And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai would say, no, I can't do without a vav because I need to separate between money that's going to Gavot, to the Bet HaMikdash, and money that's going to a regular person. These are fundamentally different types of payments. So look as follows: Chamishito, the fifth, he pays to the victim who he stole from. So that's one payment. Then the Ve'et has to say, now there's another thing that he also is obligated, and that's an Asham offering. That doesn't go to the other guy, it goes to heaven, it goes to the Bet HaMikdash. And so we need the et to separate them. Okay, but we don't want to separate them totally. So that's why you have a vav to connect them, to say that, listen, if you're not paying the fifth because you're paying something else, you're paying double, then you also do not bring the Asham offering, and that's where we leave that machloket. We next learn another law about paying 4 and 5 in a case where an animal undergoes a change. The basic law is that if I steal something, I have to give the item back, as long as it's still the same item. But let's say I steal some wood and then I build something with it. Now it's already a different item, and so now I actually acquire that by making it into a different item. That means I acquire the original thing. I still have to pay back the value, but the item itself, because it undergoes a change, now it's mine. So we're going to talk about different kinds of changes, changes to the physical thing, or a change that now it's called a different thing, has a different name. Amar Rabbi Eliyahu ganav tale v'naasa ayil v'naasa shor. נעשה שינוי בידו וקנאו, טבח ומכר, שלא הוא טובח, שלא הוא מוכר. Rabbi Eliyahu is a big chidush. He says, if I go and steal a little lamb, and then after a year or so, it becomes a ram. Or if I steal a little calf, and after a couple of years, it becomes a bull. Now it's a different thing, right? It's a different thing altogether. Before it was a little baby, and now it's a nice big adult animal. So because that's a significant change, that then I acquire the items. Now it's mine. I still owe you whatever the worth of the original thing, but now the item is mine. Therefore, if I, subsequent to it becoming an adult, if I slaughter it or sell it, so I'm slaughtering or selling my own item, and therefore I do not have to pay the 4 or 5 times payment. Okay, big chidush by Rabbi Eliyahu. Itibe Rabbi Hanina Rabbi Eliyahu, but Rabbi Hanina is going to object to it from a baraita. Ganav taleh v'naasa ayil. Aigel v'naasa shor mishalem tashlomei kefil v'tashlomei arba'a v'chamisha ke'ayin she'ganab. This baraita says that if I steal a little lamb and then it becomes a ram, or if I steal a little calf and now it becomes a bull, I pay double, or I pay 4 and 5 should I slaughter it or sell it afterwards. And so I do have to pay those, and I calculate that payment based on from the time that it was was stolen, the value back then. So here's the question: and if you, Rabbi Eliyahu, think that it's growing up is a change, and thereby the thief then acquires the item, why should he pay? He is slaughtering his own. He is selling his own item. He should not have to pay. So this goes directly against the chidush of Rabbi Eliyahu. Amar le. So Rabbi Eliyahu says back, Ve'ela mai shinui lakane. So you're telling me that a change does not effectuate acquisition? I mean, this is a general law that we see in lots of places. So you're saying that doesn't apply? And if so, if it doesn't have a change, then why should he pay the principal? Why should he pay the fine based on the amount that it was when he stole it? L'shalem ki hashta. Let him pay the amount now, because it's at the time that he slaughters it or sells it, that's when he becomes liable to pay the 405. So why should he pay? He should pay the later amount, not the original amount when he stole it, right? So no matter what you say, either if you say that shinui, that the change does make it his, then he shouldn't have to pay anything at all. And if you say that changing it does not acquire it for him, then he should pay for the current value, not the original value when it was stolen. That's it. Rabbi Eli's come back. Amar le Rabbi Chanina says back to him, Ki hashta hainu ta'ama de la mishalem mishum damar le Torah genabi mimach tichra genabi mimach. As well, I'll answer your second question. I mean, as to your first, obviously he thinks that the change does not make it an acquisition, and he's also not going to pay the current value of when he does the shechita or selling it, because the owner can say, the thief can say, did I steal from you a bull? Did I steal from you a full-grown ram? No, why should I pay 4 or 5 times the current value now that it's a big adult? I don't have to pay that. I stole from you a little animal, so I should pay 4 or 5 times the little animal, and that's a valid claim. That's what Rabbi Chanina said. Rabbi Eli said, may God save us from your opinion. And Rabbi Chanina shot right back. No, may the merciful one save us from your opinion, right? No, I'm right. No, I'm right. And they go back and forth. Okay, so very interesting discussion. But now we ask against Rabbi Chanina. Evidently, Rabbi Chanina does not think that a change in its age and size effectuates an acquisition, but what about a change in its name? Matkifla Rabbi Zera v'nikninhu b'shinui Hashem. Now its name changed. We called it before a taleh, and so now it's called a ayil. Before we called it an ayigel, and now it's called a shor. So shouldn't the change in what we call it be a significant change, and thereby the thief will acquire it? Amarava shor ben yamo karui shor, ayil ben yamo karui ayil. Shor ben yamo karui shor dichtib shor oches evoez ki yivaled. Rava says no. Although technically, if you look up a dictionary, yes, you'll see that these different words apply technically to different size animals, different age animals, but in colloquial use, a shor, even if it's 1 day old, is still called a shor, and an ayil, even if it's only 1 day old, is still called an ayil. Where do we see that? It's in the Pesukim themselves, when it says a shor, a bull, so or a sheep that or a goat that is born. So on the day it's born, still a little baby. But nevertheless, it's called a shor. We don't call it a calf. You can still call it a bull even when it's young. Ayil ben yamo karui ayil. And similarly in ayil, even if it's 1 day old, it's still called an ayil. Dichtib ve'ele sonecha lo achalti elimu de la achal kebasim achal. So this is what Yaakov says to Lavan. I never took any of your rams. I have not eaten them. I never took them illegally. So we're going to say that he meant only adult ones is the one he didn't take, but maybe the baby ones he did take. That doesn't make sense. Yaakov didn't steal anything. So we see that the adult name is a catch-all, even for young ones. So really, the name change is not significant, and that's why the Shinui Hashem here, Rabbi Chanina can say, no, I don't think that changes anything. Okay, Mikol Makom Kashya. Nevertheless, we still have to ask about him because it is going from a baby to an adult, and that's a significant change. How come that the thief does not acquire it thereby, according to Rabbi Chanina? And the answer is, Amar Rav Sheshat Hamaneh Bet Shammai Damre Shinu Bimkomo Omedet Vela Kaneh. In fact, we can only explain Rabbi Chanina's baraita if we say that it is in fact the opinion of Bet Shammai, who says in general that a change, even though something undergoes a change, it remains in place in the possession of its original owner, and the thief, in fact, does not acquire it. And so, there's no change, and therefore the thief, if he slaughters it and sells it, he's slaughtering and selling still the animal of the owner, and that's why he does have to pay 4 and 5 times. We'll see the origin of this machloket Bet Shammai and why how he disagrees with Bet Hillel, and the explanation and sources for each one in the Braita that we'll do tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.